Ia manuia lau whaafongaanga Samoa I se isi fo'i whaapoponga a tātou prokalama. Mul whaatalatala noaina, mal whaalawi noaina o awanoa ese mo Amerika Samoa. E ala I le whaongaina o the interneti. Welcome to another segment of KokoBytes, where we keep your cup of Koko Samoa rich and full with innovations and creativity in American Samoa's tech community. I am Ginger Lay Porter with my co-host, Michael McDonald. Talofa lava. Talofa, Michael?
Talofa, Ginger.
How are you?
It's nice to see you. I'm good. I'm good. It's been a little while.
It has been. We've been engaged in our process with, building the strategic plan. And can you believe that it's actually been a year now since COVID happened? And everything changed for us, right? So a lot of different things have happened since then.
Right. And tell me about it. I know I haven't yet had a chance to sit back and reflect on everything that has changed. We're so busy, with work and, everything else that comes with life, that, I've not had a chance to look back, especially as it relates to the work we're doing with the territorial broadband strategy, this little show, and everything else that's developing here in the area of broadband. But I'm sure here over the next several weeks, we'll have an opportunity to really think back over the past year and get a good close up of the landscape and have more discussions around what we've learned. Again, really in the area specifically around broadband.
Yeah, I mean, it's a time of reflection too, right? For a lot of things that have been happening globally and then in the territory as well. It's been interesting to see a lot of the different developments that have been going on, not just for broadband, but the physical aspects of the territory. So that growth, right? The growth potential that comes with any investment, right? So but going back to the American Samoa's investment in broadband, modernizing the infrastructure. I mean, that's really, really key to where we want to take American Samoa and what we've heard in the last year from our working group, the American Samoa Territorial Broadband Strategy Working Group. And so now we have the modernized infrastructure. Right now, we need to move to that. We've been talking about all the applications and maximizing the use of that capacity that's available to us now. So that comes with a lot of different things that we need to do, including this thing we hear about, the literacy part of it. In our vision as the territorial broadband strategy, part of the last component of our vision statement is we want to create this technology literate population in American Samoa. So what will it take to do that? So what will it take to create this literate population of people that will use the infrastructure? So
it's a great question. Obviously, there's a lot of work that goes into it, but even beyond that, there are other questions that come up when we're talking about creating or establishing a technology literate community, and that discussion is becoming more and more prevalent. Digital equity, right? Equal access for everybody, so that we all can compete on the same level. And so today's discussion, I've been looking forward to it. I'm interested in hearing a lot more about it and what others are doing in this area. And so I'm looking forward to having this discussion today with our guest.
Yes. And so let's get right to it. Our guest today is Mr. Kaʻala Souza, And Kaʻala is part of the team at the State of Hawaii's Workforce Development Council, working as an employment specialist, focusing on upskilling Hawaii's workforce to be ready for anything the future brings. So he is a public speaker, a corporate trainer, and author of the book Pono, a Hawaiian-Style Approach to Balance and Well-Being. So very excited to have Kaʻala join us today. So I'll go ahead and bring them in.
All righty.
Talofa lava Kaala.
Alofa, alo mai kako.
Aloha.
Alofa Kaala.
Wow. You guys kind of scared me. I was like sitting in the waiting room. Lucky thing I wasn't eating when you put me back on. There's no warning. There's no warning.
Aloha.
You guys scared me. Aloha. Thank you. Whew, lucky thing I wasn't chewing or, you know. Right?
But that's all part of it. So
Okay. Let's keep it real.
Yes.
What's up, you guys?
Yeah.
Well, welcome to another segment of KokoBytes, where today we wanted to talk to you about this thing that's this hip thing that's coming out. It's called digital literacy. And
yes.
So it's kind of a foreign concept. So, we wanted to pick your brain on what that is. What is digital literacy? And then in our little side conversation here with Mike, he also touched on something called equity. I'm like, okay, so all these things that we're hearing. So we got digital literacy, we got digital equity. So can you share with us some perspective on what those things are?
Oh, like you pick my brain. That's going to be a short conversation at that point. I don't know. I hope we can contribute here. I love this stuff though. We talk about digital literacy, digital equity, that kind of stuff. I mean, it's been around for a while, but what's happening now is that it's, that I've heard that phrase digital literacy, digital equity so many times in the last 10 months, right? Because our world is different. And now, even though, people were talking about it for years, like 10 years, easy, people recognizing that there's a gap. Some people have this digital access and some people don't. And so they've been talking about it for a long time, but only now do we realize how desperate that gap is. So, it's a good thing to talk about. I'm super excited to be on this show with you guys.
Yeah, thank you. So can you expand a little bit about what is digital literacy? What is digital equity? And how does that translate into planning and building a workforce? So, we introduce and how it translates to your work with the state of Hawaii, right? As part of the Workforce Development Council. Yeah,
can do. And you should probably have given me some time limits. You don't know, I can talk all day. So that kind of question is a big question. And we can cover a lot of stuff. But let me go back to the term literacy first, right? I was reading something from this Georgia college, Georgia University, and there was a little quote that stuck with me that said that back in the day, we're talking about reading literacy. People who could read thought differently than people who couldn't read, right? Their brains approach things differently. And then what they went on to say was that people who are digitally literate think differently now than people who are not. And so that, we're in a different kind of world where we're different problems, different situations, different contexts. And if we're thinking the same way that we were thinking back in the day, we're kind of in trouble, So I've always been interested in literacy, but not in that term. I've never used it so much as in the last year. But we've always been we love books in my house. Reading is a big deal. And I remember my wife and I, when we first got married, we're seriously, I was a youth pastor and she was in school. So we had zero money, right? So we're way below the poverty level in the America things. And we had to make a decision. We're saying as you're trying to make a budget, if it came down between food and books, what are we going to do? And so we decided to buy books, which sounds dramatic, but we never had to, make that decision because you cannot eat books. But, our thing was we homeschooled our kids, and which way back in the day, it wasn't that cool of a thing. Now it's a little bit more cool. But the whole thing for us was, I wanted them to read. So I buy whatever books they want to read, even if it was too advanced for them. I remember buying this oceanography book for my son once. It was all about waves because he's into surfing, so it was so technical that he never read it. I think it's on his bookshelf someplace. He's never read it. But we wanted to buy whatever books they're interested in because our thinking was that if you could read, you could teach yourself whatever you need to learn going forward in the future. So that's going to be the thing. And so now when we look at digital literacy, I'm pretty, our kids are super comfortable with computers. And my thing is hey, you can learn whatever you need to learn if you have this digital literacy. You have access to the computer, you have internet connection, you know how to look around, you know how to think a little bit differently. And so that for me is just opportunities for them. In the same way that books were, a digital literacy and computers are. I don't know if that answered your question, but there's a lot of questions that you had inside your thing. You know, like, so I don't know. I mean, you tell me where you want to go. I can talk all day.
Yeah, no. That was a great place to start. It's a very interesting concept. The point that you brought up, being able to think differently. If you are technology literate, I would imagine your opportunities are significantly greater than if you were not literate. And so, from the Department of Commerce's perspective, that's critical because ingenuity is a key element to driving innovation and job creation, and especially when you're dealing with an environment like ours that is rural, it's rugged. We have so many challenges here. We need our best and our brightest to think our way out of our situation. And having a population that is struggling with literacy in technology obviously is going to hold us back. And so, I certainly appreciate that perspective and shaping the discussion in that way. It's interesting because one of the things that Ginger and I have been talking about for a while now is how do we spark innovation, especially in this area, and again in entrepreneurship and job creation. And a lot of it is coming back to workforce development, and when you dig deeper into that, it's literacy.
And then you go a little bit deeper there, and it's like, can you use a computer? How do you learn? How can you learn? Because what we're talking about now, even our kids, like our kids who are in school right now are going to be in jobs 10 years from now that we can't even predict. And we don't know what the jobs are. And I try to, like, part of my work with the Workforce Development Council here in the Department of Labor, we started out by saying, hey, let's try and create this resilient workforce. Because like you guys in Hawaii, like when a butterfly flaps its wings, our economy is so vulnerable. So on the other side of the world, something happens, and all of a sudden we're just like, just not that the COVID-19 was a butterfly, it's like a huge giant Godzilla, but this idea here for us is that we're so vulnerable in our economy, we're so dependent on this one thing. But if we can, we started out thinking like, how can we have a resilient workforce? And you think about resiliency, I think about I have like 3 B's, like bouncing, that you hit the ground, but you don't stay down, you bounce back. Like we watch some of the good wrestlers or the UFC Ultimate Fighter guys, and if they're tired, they just lay down, and then the game is over, right? So if you get hit down and you get knocked down and you get hit, and you can bounce back, that's resilient. Or you can bend. Right. Like we have an Olelo no Eao in Hawaii that talks about the A'ali'i plant, which is, it says, hey, A'ali'i kumakani maiau, which means I am the wind resistant A'ali'i, right? So no wind can blow me down, and so you can bend but not break. And then for me, that's resilient too. So how do you create that kind of thing? And for us, we went around and talked to all of our stakeholders, our board members, people in Hawaii, did a lot of research online, right? Trying to learn, see what people are doing. And we ended up coming back to a couple of things that people kept saying over and over here. Our employers, our stakeholders say, hey, listen, we need people who can just use a computer. And I kind of in the beginning sort of dismissed it. And I hate to say that because it's kind of embarrassing because it seems so basic. Like we just want people who can use a computer. And this is not tech jobs, right? Like when you think of tech traditionally, you think of, coding or, AI automation. Right. But what I'm saying now, and what I've learned is that pretty much everything that we do is a tech job. So, like we had a janitor, one of my colleagues in vocational rehab here, Department of Vocational Rehab, was telling me a story of a janitor who lost his job because the company that he was working for transitioned to sending the schedule via email or text messages, and he couldn't track, and so he didn't show up. Missed his schedule, and he got fired. So, I mean, every job is a tech job. You have to have some kind of basic skills to get by, and so resiliency for us is trying to equip people with these kind of skills, not for a specific job, because this is where it gets tricky, right? Like people try and say, well, what will this training do for what job will it get me? And I'm saying, I don't even know what the jobs are tomorrow. How can I predict that? So, but I can give you the skills. If you can learn what you need to learn, you will be able to learn what you need to learn tomorrow, right? For whatever job pops up. And that way, then you start thinking differently. You start looking at entrepreneurial opportunities. Like my kids are doing things online that I've never thought of. My son sold his business his first business 3 or 4 years ago. My kids are old, so I'm old. I think my daughter is 31, 28, 25, and the two oldest never went to college. I mean, they did, but like my son is like, Dad, this is not for me. But he went on and started a business, and we've always encouraged them to, hey, what are you going to do? When my daughter was young, she would buy books from like garage sales, like for a quarter, and then she would sell them for $5 on eBay. And so we've always encouraged that. I'm like, hey, if you can keep that ratio, 25 cents and then $5, you buy something for 5,000, sell it for 25. That's nuts, So she started out like that, and my son started an Amazon business, which I think is fantastic for islands. Very rural, very remote, as long as you have a internet connection. But he sold it. I didn't even know he could sell these kind of businesses. About 3 years ago, started another one. His fiance has started an online business as well. She graduated from with her master's degree about 2 semesters ago, but she didn't go into that field. And instead, they wanted to just pursue this business that they started. And so we're learning now from her. She's like, wow, I didn't know you could do this. And that's the thing. Most people don't know what's available, what's out there. They're not aware. And I think what you guys are doing here is trying to help people see, hey, there's other opportunities. It's not just go get a job 9 to 5. That's different. That's out already. That's old.
Right.
The sugarcane doesn't exist, and we don't have a sugarcane economy here right now, right?
Right.
So tourism is something that we can't depend on. I'm talking too much. I'll be quiet.
Yeah. No, that's all good stuff. One of the areas that we've been trying to promote here locally is exactly what you pointed to: the opportunities to create jobs, to earn an income. Just using your internet connection. And now things are much different today in American Samoa than they were only 3 years ago with our internet speeds. And that's so you're right on point with sharing that. And so hopefully, those who are watching the show, who have an idea or have been sitting on the fence, with regards to starting something on Amazon as an example, picks up on that and runs with it. Yeah, no, that's great. So to recap, then, right, Ginger, digital literacy.
Say it again.
In short, I know it's just not rolling off the tongue very well, but digital literacy means, in short, our ability or capacity to use technology that's now prevalent to our advantage, basically.
I think it's a reasonable definition.
And so from that foundation, to segue into the second question that we brought up initially, this idea of digital equity. Can you kind of give us your thoughts on that? Because obviously, let's say me and a guy sitting next to me, right? I've spent years playing around with IT, with technology, and perhaps the guy sitting next to me is just now introduced to it because of the new internet resources we have here. Obviously, there's no equality between us. Now, is that inherently bad or not? I obviously, as a neighborly type of person, I want to see this person lifted up too. So, we want to see equal resources. I know that I don't want to venture too far into what might sound political, but can you give us your thoughts on what you're seeing and some of the discussions going on in Hawaii around digital equity?
Just first of all, the fact that you guys are having this discussion right now, you're in Samoa, I'm in Hawaii, and you're using this technology, it just highlights how digital literacy usually is this low, that kind of basic competency. I can read, I can use a computer. I can access a device and, pay some bills or shop on something, right? But then there's higher levels, like, low skill, middle skill, high skill. And there's levels in computer technology stuff that I don't go down. I try to look down at AWS, Amazon Web Services. It's a cloud-based kind of technology. I took a class, it was free, and I took it for about 8 minutes, and I went through the whole. I'm like, I'm out. This is too deep. I don't want to learn this stuff, But then you look at, but I had the opportunity, right? So I had a computer, I had an internet thing, and Amazon was offering it for free a few months ago, and Microsoft. In their skills initiative, they're saying when the pandemic hit, they're offering it for free. Here's 10 classes. And the trip about this is that you can, in less than a year, you can take these things, you can take these classes online, and you can change your whole career path. You can change your occupational trajectory. in less than a year. This is not like you got to go 4 years of college. You know, I don't want to talk bad about college just because UH kicked me out, you know, and nothing bad about them. And I had to go to a whole different college right after they did that. But it's a different world. And so if you can do something, it means more than if you have this, you know, paper, right? If you can do it, people want it, right? So we look at, when you talk about equity, like equality, you know, we have this thing in Hawaii, the Burt Lum and the Broadband Hui have been talking about the Digital Equity Declaration, which means that we want to have this access, this digital for all, right? And so all for us is an acronym, which I really like. I don't know who came up with this. Burt is super smart. But access is the first one, right? So ALL, digital for all, digital equity for all, and access is the first one. And then it's literacy is the second L, or the first L. And then the last L is livelihood. I really like what you said about people getting an income, you know, or looking at how to get an income. It's different from having to have a job, you know. That job mentality, I have to go get a job, is kind of old school. And it's still prevalent everywhere. When I look at workforce stuff around like different, you know, places, but really it's about income. So how do I generate income? So I love how you're thinking about that. But digital equity for us means that everybody has access, you know, like we talk about water, electricity. I think it was, shucks, I can't remember. They think where broadband internet connectivity now is like some, you know, human right, you know, back in 2016. And that's a strong statement. And I don't even know how that works, but something like water, clean water, access to that, access to like food. Not everybody to this day has that kind of, you know,
I think it's access to information, right?
Access to information.
That was now is a right. So
yeah.
And that comes with
broadband.
Connectivity. Yep.
And the broadband connectivity is supposed to be this right. And it's such a weird concept for me. I don't know how to even deal with it. But so our Hawaii broadband or digital equity declaration is digital for all. So access. So we're trying to bring in, and it's hard, same like you guys, you know, we have all these big channels between our islands. On Hawaii Island, you can't put a whole fiber ring around it optic ring, because there's like a volcano, you know, there's Volcanoes National Park is over there. So we're struggling with things that people say in the continent are not. So, you know, it costs more, it's more laborious. Some people, other companies don't want to invest in it. So access is a big deal. In the last I've been doing some basic computer classes. We're piloting an introduction to computers at a very low level, right? So this is the left click, right click, double click on a mouse. You know, what does a monitor look like? And we're about to launch that in April here in Hawaii, and then hopefully expand it. We think that there's probably 100,000 plus people that are going to be thrilled to realize that there is a scroll wheel in the middle of their mouse. Like one lady told me when she was in my first class, she goes, "What is this thing?" And we started talking about it. She goes, "What?" And she pulled out her mouse because she had brought it from home. She goes, "Mine has this too." And so she was amazed. And so that's the kind of stuff that, you know, she'd never seen it. And it doesn't mean she's not intelligent. She's just never been exposed to it. So, you know, access to with computers is the big deal. Like one of the things that we're hearing now for us, remote work is another thing. We're working with our Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, DBED, and they're trying to stimulate remote work initiatives here in Hawaii. But I just got an email right before I got on this call with somebody from Kauai on our island there that said, "Hey, this one guy that's been trying to get on to this remote work initiative. He put in his first written application, but the company wanted a video application, and he doesn't have a laptop that works. He can't get to our job centers to do it. And so right there, we just have an equity issue. He doesn't even have, you know, if we were going to send him out as a construction worker, you know, we get him like some steel-toe boots. And in this case here, hey, we want to get you a computer. So back in the 1800s in Hawaii, Queen Kaʻala, we had this big deal where in 1820, the first missionaries came. And on that boat, that was the Thaddeus, there was a printing press, right? And so it stimulated this thirst for learning that we're hoping to connect back to, because people there were just clamoring, they wanted to learn. And in fact, Queen Kaʻala, she had a trip to Hawaii Island. And when she got there was a huge crowd of people who were expecting her to come, and they were wanting to talk about books. And she had a real, for me, it was a famous quote. And this kind of what gets me. She said, she turned around, she's looking at all these people. She says, "Many are the people, few are the books." And that gets me, you know. And she said, send a letter. She sent a letter back to Honolulu and said, "Tell all the long necks, the missionaries, to send 700 books to the people here. And what we have now is a situation where many are the people, few are the computers. So we have a company, a non-for-profit here, Hawaiian Hope, that refurbishes computers. People donate them, and we're trying to buy a whole bunch of them. You say, hey, come to our computer class, and when you leave, it's like a 3-hour class. It's not a long class, but when you leave, I want to give you this computer. And like
nice.
for just for that, we want to give you this computer. It's a monitor. It's a full setup. And it sounds like, well, they should work harder for it. I'm like, why? It's a refurbish. It's cheap. It's pretty fast. You can get an SSD solid state drive installed for an extra $20. But the computers now, Chromebooks are $250. So I can get boots that cost more than that, right? So we talk about digital equity for us. It's a big deal. You cannot you can't compete in this world if you don't have access, if you don't have literacy. You're not going to be able to have the last L, which is livelihood for us, and that income that you talk about. Right.
Wow, that's incredible. So stepping back again and just trying to digest all this. Clearly, I think one of the messages is information is the great equalizer, right? However, prior to being able to get that information, you have to be able to read, right? You have to be literate, and so
yes, that's a big
one. One comes before the other, and so if we are truly trying to create an environment or a community that holds digital equity as a top priority, then digital literacy has to come first.
Yeah, the reading literacy.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, for sure. Like one person told me, you can't have digital literacy without reading literacy. But it's a weird thing because, like the company, it's a non-for-profit that we're working with in Minnesota. They're called North Star, and they do this digital literacy assessments, and they're fantastic. They came up out of this reading literacy and then branched out into this digital literacy. But what we were talking to them about is the other problem that we have is not just people don't have computers, but that one lady told me over here, our Chinatown, she goes, I would love to open up our low income apartment building for everybody here. And we think it's necessary, they need it, they're going to benefit from it. Then she goes, do you have this curriculum in Chinese? And I go, no. She said 95% of our people here who live in this complex are all native Chinese, they're Chinese speakers. And so we're looking at language as something that is a barrier too, right? So, but North Star says that they can go and change some of the coding in their platform that allows us to put in like different language resources, whatever we wanted to. So we can do it in Hawaiian, we can do it in Chinese. We can do it in and some of my friends are from Palau. And so we could put it into whatever language. I mean, obviously we have to translate it. But then going back to your question or your point on reading literacy, I've said the same thing, but there's a weird thing. So even when I've been teaching these classes like keyboarding and typing stuff in the last couple of weeks, those are input devices. And then I was telling them, hey, your voice is an input device now too. So like I can go, hey Siri, to my phone. And then Siri goes, what's up, Kaala? What do you want me to do? And I'll say, hey, can you just text my wife, what do you want to tell Lisa? Tell her I love her, I'm coming home soon, and my phone, the computer, I won't have to type it, and right. So now too, what's going to happen is that we may be able to, in a couple of years, I don't know how we will be inputting things. Will the keyboard be that as important as it is now? Probably not. And if we can get things translated into languages, can we listen to them? So the big barriers, language, lack of computers, also people with disabilities, huge. Right. Like if you're blind or you're deaf or hard of hearing, crazy. That's so challenging. And so we have some people working on that here in Hawaii. And I'm like, God bless you, because somebody has to focus on this. You can't just accidentally have digital literacy for people with disabilities. You've got to proactively pursue it.
Yeah, that reminds me of, just an interaction with my nephew who is a first grader. Does not know how to type, does not, spells little words here and there, but they can find all the Thomas the Train videos on YouTube and in all sorts of language. They just press, they know what an icon for a microphone looks like. They'll just press that and say, Thomas the Train, right? Thomas the Train, and, Zoom, all the searches on YouTube for Thomas the Train. And then I find them in Russian, I find them in Chinese. I was like, this is amazing. I said, what is that noise, right, that I can hear? But I mean, of course, I recognize the tunes and the, the different things. But, this is he started this when he was, maybe 5 years old, screen time. And that's what as long as they knew how to swipe, right? That swipe. It's not even typing anymore. It's like swipe. So it's like, amazing. So, I mean, now that's what they're swiping, right? We swipe credit cards, right? But now they're swiping their screens.
That's right.
So.
That's right. The funny thing is, like, my son and I were on a call recently with an organization, not-for-profit here, who, like, my son does websites and social media, internet marketing kind of stuff. And he's like super, super like on it. And he just thinks differently from me. So we have these long conversations, and it's only long because I can't quite grasp what he's talking about. When he talks about how to do advertising online now. So we had this meeting with this organization, and they had a whole bunch of questions about, like, how would you do stuff for our, website? But the first one was, what do you think some of the biggest challenges are? What would be the first thing that you would want to do, or a challenge you would want to address? And I wasn't sure. Like, don't ask me, ask him, right? Because he's the guy. And he said, I would want to make sure that we optimize your website for mobile first. And that's a whole different way of thinking, because most people think, oh, I want to have this pretty website. Back in the day, we used to have Flash, right? And Flash would go up and little things would shoot off. But it was so unproductive. It was pretty, but unproductive. So now he says, I would maximize for mobile devices and focus on that first, because most people have that. And if your website doesn't address that, then you're just going to lose people. Yeah, you're going to miss people. They're going to miss what your message is, what you're trying to communicate with them. And so I thought that was an interesting insight. That was like last week we had this meeting. Like, that's smart. That's smart.
Yeah, it's like, you design for the mobility of people, right?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting concept, though. Because now our life is this, right? It used to be our laptops, our desktop. We migrated from the desktop system to the laptops, and now we're on tablets and cell phones. So
yep. Too much.
Yeah.
Too much.
So
no kidding.
So looking at the digital literacy rates, right?
Yes, good question.
I just did a quick Google. I was like, what is the digital literacy? See, it doesn't roll off the tongue at all.
Because we don't say it all. A couple weeks from now, you'll be saying it a whole bunch more. And it'd be like, digital literacy. It'd be super fast. You'd be good.
Yeah. So I'm looking at that, and I found, just some random website that says the digital literacy rate in the United States is 16%.
That's an interesting number. Okay. And I think I know where that came from. The OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, Cooperation and Development, has been studying this for a long time. And when they dropped the 16%, it coincidentally, going back to your point, Mike, we have a national in America. We have a national reading literacy, illiteracy rate of about 16% too. So it's kind of interesting. But that number on 16% are people who were given a test and either didn't pass the test, refused the test, or couldn't start the test or something, right? So that's absolute zero. So you have zero skill. Like if you want to learn how to surf, you can't swim, right? You don't have a board. You have zero. But when you look at digital literacy rate, you go back to the definition of what digital literacy is. So if you go back to Mike, what you're talking about and trying to say, hey, we can use computers, we can use devices to gain information, to leverage opportunities. That's more than just, using a mouse and keyboard. And so that same study went and gave us some numbers for America. I think it was back in 2017, 2016. It was a whole national thing. But they had identified about 67% of Americans 16 to 65 that were either poor to terrible to zero. So the zero was about 16%. But then you're looking at 67% of people who are going to struggle with computers. They're going to be poor to terrible to zero. That's huge. And it's not because they're not intelligent. It's because you don't have to do it. You don't have to use it. I live on Oahu. Right. We don't need 4-wheel drive trucks. When I go to Molokai, our place is up a dirt road and I had to learn how to drive 4-wheel drive. I don't know how to do it. I YouTube how to drive 4-wheel drive because I don't know how. It doesn't mean I don't know how to drive. I just didn't ever need to use it. So the number is big, but it also depends on how you define it. And then, what's included in that, because, there's some complex things like can you go to an email, open it up, download an attachment, make some changes in a file, re-upload it. Those are complicated steps. And so even when in my last couple of classes, this last couple of weeks, I say, hey, go to this website. I put up a website on the screen. I say, go to this website. And it takes 10 minutes for people who are not, used to this. Like, where do I input the URL? Where do I put that? And again, it doesn't mean they're not intelligent. It just means they haven't had to use this skill. Or use this tool. And so they have to gain the skill to use the tool.
Yeah, so I have one more story and then I'll stop with my stories.
No, the stories is it.
Yeah, but that very much in line with, so my dad has been a math teacher for over 40 years in the, school system. So then, the shift into online education, right? So then the need to transpose all of his, worksheets that he had copied from the book or whatever, right, into online learning. And so, as I'm observing him struggle with this, right? So he does email, that's absolutely fine. He recently learned how to download a file. He never knew that all my emails, I was attaching something. So I would talk to him and I said, did you get my, email, the attachment of the, picture or something like that? And he says, I got your email, but I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't see anything, right? I was like, so I recently, so this is how you download a file. And this is how you view it, right? And then the next thing is, as we're going through his, transitioning to online learning was, so from a workbook or on his worksheets that he writes, right, all his math problems, he is typing them on his Word document, right? And so even the concept then of copy and paste, right? So how do you get this Word document into an email?
Yep.
So then, like you said, it took him, well, not 10 minutes. It took him like hours, right? Because he's retyping everything that's in the Word document into the text of the email, and so I'm like, what are you doing? He spent hours on the computer last night, and he's on it again, but he wouldn't ask me, right? Right.
So that's perfect. That's a great story.
Right? But no,
it's a great story.
Yeah, but that skill. So, and at one point he thought, I've already done my 40 plus years of teaching. That's it for me, right? I'm gonna say, this is it. This is my tolerance. I'm done with this, So then, you have those frustrations of using technology. It's like, okay, let's rewind, let's breathe and evaluate the situation. How can we do this better, right?
That's really, so you're a patient daughter. That's a fantastic thing. Not everybody has patient daughters or kids that can help them. I tried to build a little shed on Molokai, and I was, YouTubing how to frame a wall, 2x4s, and my brother-in-law Kyoki is a contractor, and so he's like, "How are you doing?" I'm like, "Not bad. I got one wall up." He's like, "It's been 2 weeks." "What do you mean one wall?" I'm like, "Don't judge me." So he's "Hey, oh man," he got really frustrated. He's like, "I'm just gonna come over." I'm like, "Okay, great." So we flew him over to Molokai for us, put all the rest of the walls up, the roof in like 1 weekend, and he's just so good with it. And I'm not, because I don't have to use that. Now it still takes me super long time. And I do it because I like it. Yeah. But you're talking about skills that are going to change people's lives right now and their livelihood. And so those are big deals. The fact that if you can still learn, I had one auntie come, she's an old, kupuna for us, and probably in her 60s or 70s. And she goes, "Oh, we're so old already." I go, no. If you're still learning, that's the thing. If you stop learning, then you're old, but if you're still learning, then you're young. It doesn't matter, So if you can learn, that's the big deal.
Right on. Good message.
Yeah. It's not just me, right? There's this one guy, Alvin Toffler, who is a futurist, and he says that the illiterate in the future are not going to be those who can't read and write. It's going to be those who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn or something. Those are going to be the illiterate people. So whatever the literacy is, whether it's digital, or reading or construction or music literacy, whatever the literacy is that you need to have for your livelihood, that's the big thing. So for us, again, the Workforce Development Council here in Hawaii, we're a state department, connected to the Department of Labor. And our thing was like, how do we have a resilient workforce? So, we can't predict the future, but, our thing was like putting together this plan to, we're looking at a 3-year plan, basically, that's going to try and reach people who don't have these basic literacy skills, but also those who are computer competent, but, maybe in industries or sectors that are vulnerable. So we're talking hospitality, right? So, but you have, you have computer skills. So what kind of skills can we give you there, right? So we're looking at online learning resources that, if you buy them in bulk, like things like LinkedIn Learning or Coursera, they have all these courses, they've aggregated them for you. There's thousands of things there. Again, you can go and change your whole career path in less than a year. If you can learn online, which means if you can access the internet, if you have literacy and you have the patience and you have the determination, you can change your whole game. And so that's us, our plan is 3 years. We're working with our libraries now. Because the libraries, there's 51 of them in our state, and they're everywhere in the community. So they're providing like these locations and computers. We're getting some instructors from the community college system to come out and teach classes. Again, very, very basic for people who are at that 0 level, right? 0 to 1, maybe 1.5. And then we're going to try and connect to the people who already have these skills. What do we have for them? How can we equip them? And it's still a digital, upskilling, right? So you already know this, but maybe you can transfer into something like, Salesforce is a big deal, and you can do that all online. And if you can have these kind of skills, then you can look at remote work. But everybody in the world is looking at remote work. So you're going to be competing not with just people around you for that job, but, not just with America, but everybody, right? So India, Bangladesh, right? Kenya. If you are on Fiverr, if you've ever used Fiverr before, it's where you can start your own business, just, typing stuff up, doing computer stuff. I hired some people for Fiverr to help us edit a book. But you can make money off of that. But if you don't know, and you don't have the skills, you don't have the awareness, you don't have the literacy, then you cannot play that game. You can't compete.
Well, I was going to say, Ginger, wow, we have a lot to chew on.
Yes.
Of course, Kaala, typically after we have these discussions, we go back and, we have these, one-on-one discussions about the content. And gosh, well, where do we begin?
All these ramblings,
yeah, well, that's, it's critical to at least from my point of view, to get my wheels spinning. You just put content in and it starts to, grease the wheels, so to speak.
Same.
Yeah. And so I really do appreciate you taking the time out to share some of your thoughts, your experience with the people here, or wherever they're going to watch this KokoBytes from. They could be there in your backyard, but
you could be around the world now, man.
Yeah, right. Anywhere. Right. But yeah, we certainly do appreciate you taking the time sharing a little bit of what our brothers and sisters up the road are talking about in this area. Very important and timely topic.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure for me. And like I said, I think we should have this next discussion at that beach in your background right there. So I'll come down and visit. Yeah. That's where we should have it. But if I could share one last thing, like the thing that gets me, and it's an emotional thing. This is a weird thing. This digital literacy, when I talk about Queen Ka'ahumanu, Liho was Kamehameha II, and he really started this because he was king right when the missionaries came in. And it was part of the kingdom it wasn't really the missionaries pushing, it was the kingdom, the leadership advocating for this and elevating the need for this. And so saying, take your printing press, start printing some books. Oh, you're out of paper? We're going to fund that paper. Oh, we can make schools. Let's do that. We can get instructors. So if you have a missionary on board your ship, we're not going to charge you. We're going to charge you less to come in. So there's all these different processes that were set up by the government to help, to elevate the awareness of literacy and the need for it. But it was Kamehameha III, Kauikeaoli, who said, when he was real young, and this gets me, he says, He Aupuni Palapala Ko'u, in Hawaiian, and it means mine will be a kingdom of literacy. And it was this will that I think really started this. And so Hawaii ended up being one of the most literate nations in the world in 1832, 1833. You know, we have a guy named Kaʻala Souza who wrote a couple articles on this, and you can check this out. So I had to become a little bit of a historian because I forgot what I heard about this in school. But hey, Pala Ko'u, mine will be a kingdom of literacy, was like the statement in like his opening address, you know, like, and that was a big deal. And he followed through with it. And then within about 10, it's a long time, right? So 10 years, 12 years, I think, then Hawaii starts to become this nation that is literate. And we would like to be like that. And then our brothers and sisters down south, like you're saying, you know, I think everybody, especially, you know, in our Pacific Island group, should be like just leveling up on this so that we can compete. You know, I mean, really, we cannot just, there's a different way of thinking. And sometimes I'm a little bit too, oh, it's okay, you know. But then like we have like a UFC fighter here in Hawaii, Max Holloway, and he's super, super humble. But when he goes into the ring, you know, he can stand and bang, right? So I think we need to be kind of humble, but still be competitive. And for that, it's going to require a whole bunch of people working together, the government, you know, saying, hey, ours is going to be a place that's going to be literate, and then laying down some goals for that, and then we work together for that. So we can work together, like right now. I love talking to you. Like, I don't know how far away you are, you know, but far. So we can do this, and, you know, I want to keep doing it.
Yeah, Mike is 2,300 miles south of us. So that's the power of this, right? And the power of this connectivity and access.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, with that, thank you, Kaala, so much for joining us today on KokoBytes, where we keep your cup of Koko Samoa full and rich with innovative and you know, discussions like these concepts here in our community. So, you know, I want to close with just saying that the challenge for us, you know, well, for us and what we're getting from discussions is really, I want to change that. Many are the people and many are the computers.
That's right. That would be wonderful.
That's the challenge here for us.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Mahalo, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, I got mine. I don't got mine, but I got a cup.
All right.
Thanks, Kaala.